everybody once again. Right, today we're going to a new topic and a new sutta. Today's sutta is called Avyākata Sutta A7.54. It is in chapter 11 of SD48 or SD48.11. And before that, just a bit of introduction. This sutta, what is it about? Okay, so the topic's on page 96. The undetermined questions. Okay, what are the undetermined questions? The word undetermined comes from the Pali word Avyākata. Avyākata. Vyākata. Right. Avyākata is the opposite of vyākata. Vyākata means that which is explained. Vyākaroti means he explains. Okay? Or declared, if you like. So Avyākata means unexplained, undeclared, not taught by the Buddha. These are 10 things which the Buddha doesn't deal with, these 10 questions. We'll come to them in a moment. The point here is, what does it mean? Now, what is the Dharma about? Or to be more specific, what is early Buddhism about? When we talk about the Buddha's teaching, we're not talking about later ideas. When Buddhism grew beyond India, interacted with local culture and so on. We have a different new world talking about Buddhism after that. Yesterday we had this Lotus Sutra seminar. There was a lot of interesting talk about the nature of Mahayana. There's so much to talk, right? And then some people just, felt befuddled, confused, but so many things you can talk about, stories and all these countless numbers of Buddhas and so on. So one person asked, early Buddhism is so direct and so clear, so simple, right to the point, so to speak. So whereas Mahayana is so different. Why is it so? Well, it is a matter of different times and so on. The point here is that we have a choice today, and if you choose to find out the meaning of life, you want to be happy in this life, you want to solve problems, you're serious about understanding nature of life, overcoming suffering and so on, then definitely early Buddhism is the best choice. Because it's very direct, very clear, as you will see in the sutta in a moment, in terms of structure as well as the spirit of the sutta. In other words, when we are spiritual, as against being religious, religious is more a ritualistic, a gregarious, social aspect, if you like. The crowd approach to religion. There is the spiritual aspect. Spiritual means spirit. You alone decide for yourself, okay? And it's not easy, when you're alone for yourself. I mean, if you're beginners, we are new, we often like to follow the leader. We don't like to stand out in the crowd, as the Japanese saying goes, the nail that sticks out gets hammered. So we'd rather not be different from the crowd. Maybe we are shy. Why are we shy? Because maybe we do not know enough things, or maybe we like the experience, or we have been hurt before. So many reasons why we can be shy, we can be a little introverted and so on. So here, in other words, it's easy to follow the crowd. Then there are some people who say, oh no, I can think for myself, I'm very independent. It's a very interesting psychologist challenge here. So you go to a crowd, join a crowd, any crowd. Whether it's an election crowd, or party, or wedding group, or sitting at a table talking with others, you find this person who says he's an individual, he's different, you find he will somehow have to meld with the crowd. Not only meld with the crowd, you'll be surprised at things he says, how he conducts himself, and how he agrees with other people. In other words, when you're in a crowd, no matter what you think, somehow you will get caught up with the crowd. Unless you are very skillful. we don't want to offend the crowd. I mean, there's no reason to offend the crowd. You know? When you go into a crowd, you want to make friends. And, I mean, you don't just go into a crowd and say, hey, I'm an individual, you know, so you're all stupid and wrong. I mean, that's a very silly thing to say. So when you're with a crowd, you just want to be friends, basically. But sometimes you can get carried away with a crowd. So certain teachings are what I call crowd teachings. They are meant to appeal to the crowd. Another way of talking about this is being faith inclined. So a lot of Mahayana Buddhism is that. Mahayana Buddhism is very successful because it's crowd oriented. It appeals to the crowd. You use stories, big words, interesting words. People ask, what's the meaning? Teacher says, oh, I can't tell the meaning, it's very deep. Student says, wow, that's wonderful, you know. You know, this teacher teaches something which even I can't understand. And it goes like that. Because once you can understand something, it appears to be useless. Not so. Because in Buddhism, when you understand something, you are liberated. That's the big difference. That's why early Buddhism goes right to the point. This is suffering. This is the ending of suffering. Okay? So, we must make the choice. The choice up to you. That's the thing about Buddhism. We're very free of all those things. So, in early Buddhism, the Buddha says, okay, this is what, the only thing I teach. Suffering, ending of suffering. This is the short version of the Four Noble Truths, if you like. Okay? Of course, later Buddhism will start talking about this idea of suffering in different ways. But you must go back to this early Buddhism. Right? Without early Buddhism, there will be no other Buddhism. That is why after 4 or 5 decades of studying Buddhism, I say, oh, I think it's time I go back to the source. You know? It's easier to really, if you understand the source, you understand everything else. So, the Buddha says, okay, there are certain things I don't deal with. Okay, these are the 10 points, you know. These 10 points which are written on the board, the 10 theses, what the world likes to discuss, which is fine, you know. I mean, if you want to discuss, that's philosophy, but that's not what Buddhism is about. Because if Buddhism ended up as a philosophy, and there is Buddhist philosophy, a lot of Buddhist philosophy, you find you will never get enlightened, you see. There are tons of books. Look at how many books you have in this library. And these are Chinese books alone, you know. You should see my library. My library is like 5 times more than all these books here those days, you know. Maybe more than, even 10 times, you know, all these books in English. And the scholars are very good in what they are learning, very specialized. They can tell you all the words, the meaning of the word, history of the words, and so on. Unfortunately, they're not awakened. Nobody who got a PhD in Buddhism became awakened on that account. I mean, you don't say so-and-so PhD, awakened. It doesn't happen. Okay? Because those are studying of the words. Okay? Now I'm supposed to prepare a talk on Lotus Sutra, chapter 8. I have to read through all the different translations. And I have to look at the Pali text or Sanskrit text. This is very interesting. I think I'm the only one in the whole group who looks at the Sanskrit text. The others will look at the Chinese text. So the Chinese text is the translation of a translation, you see. So if you look at the Chinese text, you've got to like go through 2 levels, and the chances of making errors are greater. From Sanskrit or from some other Prakrit sometimes.
You say it's translation or translation. So do you mean say Sanskrit was a translation of something else? Yeah.
From the Pali, I suppose. Or it's the way, yeah, either Prakrit or...
What was it?
Prakrit means vernacular. Vernacular, yeah. Because the Sanskrit texts were written much later, put it that way. So it's not exactly a translation, but Buddha's time they don't use Sanskrit. Buddha said don't use Sanskrit, because Sanskrit is the high-flown language.
He used Magadhi, didn't he?
Yeah, Magadhi and so on. So, in other words, so I use Sanskrit, and then when I look at different translations, it's very interesting because one of the latest translator, the simple, one very interesting point was the 7 Buddhas, you know. The sutta says, oh, you know, this Guna, Maitrayani Putra, he was he was teaching under all the seven Buddhas. That's what the Sanskrit says. So this latest translator, I mean, no need to mention his name. He says the seven Buddha, and our Sakyamuni is number 8. No, that's wrong. Because the seven Buddhas, number 7 is Sakyamuni. And then there was another translator. I think it's the version, the Yoyama's version. So he translated it, says, and the past 7 Buddhas and our Sakyamuni. So again, in other words, these people, they missed out the point. They do not know the nature of the 7 Buddhas. See? The 6 past Buddhas in our own time, I mean not our own time, I mean these historical Buddhas as they are called.
They're all historical?
Well, according to, you might say, in the text, historical in the sense they're mentioned in the text, not historical in the sense of existence like you and I. No? So there are 7. So beginning with Pasi, and then the last one is Kassapa. That's just before our Buddha, and then Sakyamuni. So these are the 7. Okay? So this is where I was at first also thought that they were right. Then I said, it can't be, because we always talk of Kassapa as the Buddha before ours, you know, and Kassapa is not number 7. So these are little details we may miss sometimes. So translators have a big problem, you know. So you really have to know a lot of stuff. So in other words, what I'm saying, you will never find one translation 100% really good. But of course, they all have their uses. So if you are a scholar or a student, you look through different ones.
The 7 Buddhas are born in different places? Or
in our world. The 7 Buddhas in our world. This is not one.
In our world, but is it in
different countries? Okay, these 7 Buddhas are in the early Buddhist texts. So they are talking about, according to tradition, they all rise in India, you know. This, like India is like some kind of most civilized culture in those ancient times now. I suppose you cannot take it too literally. Let's say, for example, Sakyamuni, Kassapa, maybe India, you know. But you look at India, in the prehistoric age, India was like at the bottom of the world, you know, this big, what do you call it, common continent, you know, massive continent. And then India broke away from where Africa is, and then it started going in an arc, you know, and then it hits the Himalayan mountains. So apparently, this is a long period of time, you know. So there are kind of civilization before ours. So this is a very interesting, mysterious topic, you know. So the Buddha before ours. That means, when is this before ours? You know why I say this? Because in the Pali Suttas, India is always what they call referred to as an island. And in Indian word, Pali Sanskrit, the word is Deepa or Dvipa. Okay? It can mean island or land, but here it means island. It can also mean continent. But then we know India is not a continent, you know? Why do they refer to India as a continent, as an island? You know? Then one day I look at these prehistoric maps. You know? India actually is or was an island, and it started moving slowly from where Africa is, South Africa, moves as an arc, and then kind of pushing against the Himalayan mountain. And the Himalayan mountain is now still rising by a few millimeters per year. So I thought myself, this is very interesting, you know. And then from there you use a bit of deductive reasoning. That means the Sakyamuni, Kassapa Buddha must be in the past, some ages ago in our world. That means there was some past civilization, you know, maybe before dinosaurs, after dinosaurs, we don't know. So these are interesting mysteries where we will never know. Okay? So the Buddhas in our world, but maybe 2 of them are in India, but the others we do not know, but in this world. Okay?
Yeah, if Sakyamuni was the one who sort of came up with Buddhism as we know it, why are the previous ones also known as Buddhas? If they did not, you know.
Buddhism is the word we use. The Buddha didn't use that word. He just said the teaching, sasana. okay, or dharma, which simply means the truth. I'm teaching the truth, you know. So actually it's a small d dharma, see, but for us today we call capital D dharma. This is our dharma, you know, something like that. So imagine, you know, someone discovers something right now. We're living in the Buddha's time, and then he discovered the truth. He just say, okay, let me tell you what's going on. You know? So he doesn't label his teaching as Buddhism. He just said the dharma, and then another religion also say that's their dharma. So you got the Buddha's dharma, you got the Jain dharma, you got the Brahmin dharma. Right? So truth teaching. So there was no labeling. So the Buddhas of the past also discovered the same truth. And the truth they discovered is basically the three characteristics. Everything in this world are impermanent, suffering, non-self. And then from there, they teach the deeper details. So the Buddha said, whether there are Buddhas arise or not, this truth remains so. But Buddhas appear from time to time and declare this to the world.
Did he say so? Did the Shakyamuni Buddha say that there were Buddhas of the past, and did he say that whatever he taught was taught before, nothing new? Did he say that?
Well, not so many words. Implicitly. Okay, this is what he said in the what we call suttas. He says, the fact things arise and pass away, you see impermanence, you see dukkha, suffering, you see non-self. These are self-evident truths. They're all there, all around you. Whether Buddhas arise or not, these are truthful. Then a tathagata arises in the world and teaches you this truth. So we can interpret that saying that, well, in the past also the Buddhas are there. But he rarely referred to past Buddha. He does, but rarely. Yeah, there are stories about past Buddha.
Did he name them?
Well, the 7 Buddhas are named. The 7 Buddhas, starting with Pasi and so on, and then you got Kassapa. Yeah, 7. Then later they grew to 24, and as centuries passed, the number grew more and more.
Yes,
so, yeah, he did do that. But they do not teach exactly in the same way, but the basic ideas are the same. The past Buddhas, I mean, the Buddha is not tape recorders, you see, right? So they will basically teach the same ideas, but in different ways. And some, for example, there are 6 Buddhas, right? The first 3, Vipassi and 2 others, they did not promulgate, they did not introduce the Vinaya. And they did not systematize the teaching. So when they pass away, when their immediate disciples pass away, the teaching also passed away. So it's not always that the Buddha say, oh, we want to save the world, you know. The Buddha is not like that. Certain Buddhas may, certain Buddhas may not, okay. The last 3 did, okay. The last 3, they introduced the Vinaya so that the monks could, there could be monks even after the Buddha's time, even after the first generation of Arahats. So the Vinaya was introduced, the Dharma was systematized, so the teaching persisted.
The
last 3.
Preceding, the 3
correct.
Preceding Shakyamuni.
Yes, yeah.
And we know this because Shakyamuni said this?
Yeah, it's mentioned in the early suttas. I forget which sutta is this. I think there's this Janavasabha Sutta, I think, one of them. So it's mentioned in the early suttas. Yeah. However, all these ideas became, people developed these ideas, just saying, oh, you know, since the Buddha can teach this, anyone who can teach it is also a Buddha. But I think you cannot jump to the conclusion. So Buddhism is so democratic. It's just like any democracy. You got to listen carefully to these people. Some of them are very good in talking. Some of them don't even know what they're talking about. So you got to be very wise in deciding what you want for yourself, right? So in other words, informed choice is very important, right? So like I said, if you study early Buddhist texts, you find it's clearer, safer, less dramatic and fabulous stories. Stories are interesting. For example, when I present the Lotus Sutra, I'm going to present it as literature. You know, I had a really spiritual struggle the last couple of months, you know. I told myself, I don't want to talk about Lotus Sutra, I'm very happy with the Sutra. But since I've been invited to represent Theravada, I said I have to speak. You know? I said, I don't know what I'm going to speak, because if I really speak my mind, I'm going to upset a lot of people. But if I tell them what they want to hear, then I'm just lying, telling lies, telling the truth here. So, what to do? No, I have no answer.
But you were invited from, I take it that you invited, but I take it that you were invited specifically because you're from a different school of thought.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a forum presenting different thoughts.
True.
So if you're going to mouthpiece or you're going to say what you think the audience want to hear, then the whole purpose is defeated when you must all go home.
No, that's true. No, I totally agree with you.
I'm very sorry, there are a lot of Mahayanis
True.
in there.
Yes, very
and
true.
the questions I raise is not because I want to,
Well, you must
not
know.
because I want to criticize, but I truly
True,
want to,
true,
I
yeah.
truly meant what I asked.
No, I'm just telling my mental process, you see. I've not finished my story yet, okay?
Yeah.
So I was struggling and said, oh dear, what shall I do, okay? So, so something interesting happened, you see. I didn't want to tell this until my session comes, but it's okay. I think I want to tell it to you because you are such wonderful friends. No? So on the early morning, yesterday, right? Yesterday was the first session in the Lotus Sutra. I got up early in the morning. It was a very quiet morning. In fact, I was still in a dream state. And suddenly all these ideas came to my mind. I said, this is how you're going to present the Lotus Sutra. I'm talking to myself. No Buddhas appeared to me, okay? In my mind, I said, this is how you're going to present it, all right? And then, okay, you can present it as like this literature, and you explain what's the meaning of our heart, what's the meaning of Buddha. And in that way, you make both sides happy. Yeah, so I said, I'm so happy. After that, I felt so confident, you know. Then the next thing is, I told myself, okay, what about today's session, you know? I don't know how it's going to be like. One of my old friends, you know, she phoned out and said, you be careful tonight, you know, it might be a big fight. I said, hope not. And thankfully, everybody was quite sporting, you know, so to speak. Yeah. So we're going to have fun, you know? So wait till my session comes, huh? Such a date. Okay? In fact, sometimes I wish it would give me a longer time, but never mind.
When are you going to speak?
The 8th session in March. Chapter 8. I'm the 8th speaker. Yeah, I think we need a bit of support from the early Buddhists. Huh? We need a bit of support from those who are practicing early Buddhism. The 9th week, is that?
Because yesterday was not the first chapter,
Yeah.
it was the introduction, so it has been
Yes.
the 9th week.
Yeah, but it's chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
Alright, so that's a very dramatic introduction. Huh? Okay, so what are the 10 questions that are listed on the board? Why the Buddha? Sorry?
Yeah, how come you're doing this one first instead of the thesis first?
Because it's very theoretical and I don't want to lecture to you, rather we discuss and you can anytime interact. So I'm going to summarize all these points. In fact, I'm summarizing the whole lecture, the whole essay. So what you can do is, when you go back, you can look up. So what I've said will be given in detail in the essay, because in the time we have here, I don't think I can cover the whole essay. So I'm summarizing it for you, all the points of it. All right? For example, you find, I mentioned there, what page is that? 69. You find, I've used a diagram on page 69, which appears on page 96 also, very easy to remember. So you find that the diagram is there. So why I don't want to study this text with you is because it's a very intellectual, it's a summary of, not summary actually, it's more of a cross-section of ideas about the 10 theses. So I'm going to summarize for you. From the summary you will know it is quite sufficient, and then if you want the details, you look at the essay. Now, the 10 theses are very popular in the Buddha's time. You might say even today, these 10 points are being discussed all over the place, where people like to argue or they are seeking the answers, but not if you are a meditator. Okay? The Buddha's, early Buddhism, the Buddha is a contemplative tradition. A contemplative tradition means meditation. And the worst enemy of meditation is thinking. And these are 10 points that make you think a lot. So if you think a lot, you can't meditate, you see. It's not that the Buddha is against all these 10 points for just what they are. Rather, what is the purpose of Buddhism? You want to meditate, you got to let go of thinking, right? So it's a totally different kettle of fish, as they say. Different idea, different spirit. All right. So having said that, we look at the 10 points. I've kind of divided them up so it's easier to digest. The first 4. Number 1 is the idea that the world is eternal. So you have one group with that kind of idea. Another group or another individual says, oh no, the world is not eternal. The universe will end. They keep saying, what, 2012, 2012 has passed. Nothing happened. So now they're looking for another year now. Sooner or later, you get someone's going to come up and say, oh, I don't know, what year the world's going to end again, right? And then number 3, the world is finite, limited in space. Number 4, the world is infinite. That means extend forever, so to speak. So 1 and 2 deals with time, 3 and 4 deal with space. Okay? Now then, thesis 5. That is the view, the self is the same as the body, right? And this is the very common idea today in Singapore. The body is self-same, so when the body dies, self also dies. The soul also dies. Right? Then number 6, the self and the body are different. Okay? So this one is about the soul and about the self. Then the last section is set by the self. Sometimes these 4 appear by themselves in the sutta. These are questions, you might say, survival questions. Survival. In philosophy, survival means after death state. So what happens to a person after he dies? Right? Now, I'm just summarizing, so I'm not going to comment on the details here. The tathagata, just hold on with me for a moment. Okay? Tathagata, one does come, exists after death. That's number 7. View number 8, does not exist after death. Number 9, both exist and does not exist. Number 10, neither. Neither exists nor not exist after death. So these are called the 4 alternatives of truth, if you like, or the 4 tetralemmas. Exists, does not exist, both exist and not exist. Last one, neither. So this is where Indian logic has got 4 possibilities, whereas Greek logic, Aristotelian logic, only 2. Aristotelian logic, it's yes or no, on, off, right, binomial. And from that logic, you have all this, especially this computer system, modern mathematics. I once mentioned this idea to a mathematical lecturer, a professor, I think, one of my friends in the US. So I told him, I said, you know, the Indians have this tetralemma for things, you know, unlike the West. The West is only binomial 2. So his remark was, he says, oh dear, if the Westerners had adopted the 4 points, there'll be no computers and no mathematics as we know it today. Because all the mathematics that we have today, Western mathematics, is based on the idea of yes, no, on, off. Computers especially. Right? So in other words, we're talking about philosophy, Western philosophy, especially materialistic philosophy, and we're talking about spiritual questioning. In other words, in India, they're talking about, on a mental level, we can talk about 4 possible states. But in physical reality, only 2. Okay, so this is just an extra final point, right? But now let's go down to a bit more detail. Let's look at number 1 again. How is the world viewed? Okay, so now there are those who look at the world and say, oh, this world is eternal in time. It will not end. It goes on and on forever. And this is a very common view. Okay? In a sense, you might even say, if the Buddhists have to choose, they probably will choose this first idea that it is eternal. But again, we don't make a big deal of this, because to us we say the universe is a concept in our own mind. Now imagine, even when I start saying that, if you are a bunch of philosophers, it is going to start a lifelong debate. But there's so many things you can talk about. What do you mean by the world is eternal? Nature of time, nature of perception, right? So that's why the Buddha says, no, it's your own perception, your own views. And there's no end to discussing this, because each of us have a way of looking at the universe. That is why there's no end to it. And that's why there's no end to questioning and answering in the Mahayana seminar. Because it's all different people's opinions. Your way of looking at things is the writer's way of looking at things, it's the disseminator's way of explaining it, so everybody can see their own ways. There's no end to the kind of discussion. Number two is the view the world is not eternal. The world is not eternal is very similar to the self also. The self is same as the body. Now, these two, they go together, okay, this in terms of time. Those who say the world is eternal, they also might say, for example, the self is eternal, right? The self can exist after death. So these are the eternalists. They're connected with the next section, which we will talk about in a moment. Then those who say the world is not eternal, in other words, the world will end one day, also tend to believe that the self also is and the body are the same thing. These are the materialists. Okay?
So are you saying that the word world in 1 and 2 is interchangeable with self, or do we say world physical world?
No, they're not interchangeable, but they are kind of parallel ideas, similar ideas, as you will notice when you come to about self. Okay. Okay, let me go a little bit more detail. When we say the world is eternal, what do we mean by worlds? Very important, all right? So there are two ideas. When we say the world is eternal, maybe we are talking about the universe, the whole universe. Next question is, what is the universe? Even our best mind in science, Stephen Hawking, still has to write a book about it, right? So, what is the universe? It's conceptual. It's up to you, right? But if you say the world, because in loka, in Pali, in Indian language, can mean world, can mean universe. Okay, it's a broad term. Now, if you say the world is eternal, definitely it doesn't apply to our world, Earth, or even the solar system, even our galaxy. There is a time limit. It will be destroyed. Then again, in the Avyākata Sutta, for example, the Digha Nikaya, number of suttas there, they talk about the universe as a big system with many solar systems. And that universe also gets destroyed. So again, you find that the universe has got time limit. So you have like three concepts of this, right? Our world, and then this idea of the universe, which is destroyed, Avyākata Sutta. Then you have this big universe in which the destruction takes place, right? For example, the sutta says, okay, there comes a time when the universe is destroyed, or what in modern terms we say a big crunch. Nothing exists. Now, when you say nothing exists, there must be something with which to relate to the nothing, you know. So it's not so simple. You see my problem of the idea, okay? So there you are. So many possibilities, no end to it, right? So our world will end, yes. Our universe will end, yes. But this big universe is a concept. So either one can apply depending on what you're talking about, how you look at the universe. Number three, the world is finite in terms of space. There was a time when people believe that our world is flat. Oh, by the way, this is something I'm going to surprise the Lotus Sutra seminar with. That according to the Lotus Sutra, the world is flat.
What? There's a sutra that says the world is flat?
Yes, in fact, from my chapter, there's a very interesting line that says the world is flat. Whether they see, well, the early Buddhists, we take it as a disc. I don't know whether the Lotus Sutra mentioned disc or not. Anyway, so it's flat, Alright? So, and you find that certain people long ago, now we come to the historical idea, they live in a certain country, they think that that's all the world to them. Especially the forest people, Stone Age people. To them, for example, they live in the forest. I've seen one of those movies about those Amazonian Indians, the tribal Indians. You tell the kids, don't go beyond the forest, don't go beyond the jungle. There are dangerous beings there who will kill you and eat you. Those are monsters, they're demons. That's us, by the way. We're living outside the jungle. So we go there, we cut down the trees and so on. So to them, their world, their universe is the jungle. Right? So those days we thought, oh, our world is just, here's our universe, and then this world, not universe, this world, goes, the sun goes around the earth. There was one time, and then things began to change. So in other words, our conception of the universe began to expand, right? So, where is the limit of the universe? The Buddha did give a hint here. There was, in the Rohitassa Sutta in Samyutta, this ascetic Rohitassa, he came to see the Buddha. He asked the Buddha, can you tell me, has the universe an end? Is there an ending of the universe? Is there a border, like the age of the universe? Can you reach the end of the universe by going? This was his question. The Buddha says, you can't. You cannot reach the end of the universe by going. Here it's very interesting because the Buddha says something, but Rohitassa thinks of it in another way, different meaning. Okay? So Rohitassa says, oh, you're right, yes, because in the past life, I was this rishi, I was this really psychic guy. I could go to deep meditation, then I spent my whole life, I don't know why he did that, he spent his whole life just flying through the air to reach the end of the universe. So he said something interesting, then I just stopped a while to, just to answer nature's call. The question is, how do you do that? He's flying through the universe, right, looking for the end. Probably he must have stopped in other worlds, like some space adventure, He says, I've traveled all my life through space. I could not reach the end of the universe. So you're right. Then the Buddha turned the tables. What the Buddha is saying is he's talking about the physical universe. He's talking about the physical universe. Okay? Physical universe, no end. See? Then the Buddha says, however, without going to the end of the world, you cannot end suffering. Double negative,
Cannot what?
If you do not go to the end of the world, you will not end suffering. So he's using a double negative here. So you will simplify it. What he's saying is, you must still end the world. Only by ending the world, you end suffering. So what the Buddha has done is, very typical situation here, he raises the level of language from the world language to Dhamma language.
So did Buddha mean our sense world?
Correct. The world here means our five senses and the mind. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. This is found in the Sabba Sutta, S-A-B-B-A Sutta, the all. What is the all? The all of our six senses. Internal six senses, external six sense objects, the six consciousnesses combined, that's our world. Anything beyond that, the Buddha says, you can suggest, but you're going to be vexed, you're going to be troubled. But there's nothing beyond our six senses. Right? So what the Buddha is saying, you must understand the nature of your six senses, and that's where the end of the world really is. So there you are, you can see the nature of the Buddhist language, right? So that's in terms of time. Right? So you can say the world is eternal, the world is not eternal in terms of time. The world is finite, not finite in terms of space, right? So is this universe going to extend forever? What do you mean by forever? Right, once you say forever, you notice time and space begin to combine. I can say forever, this place, this road is going forever, that means no end, right? Or I can also say time like, I'm waiting forever, so sense like endless time also. So forever can apply to time as well as space. So in other words, there's no end to these ideas, views of this kind of thesis. No? All right, any questions on the first 4 points? Clear enough, eh? Right, now the next set, number 5 and 6, the self or the soul, right? So you have some people who say the self and the body are the same. Notice the body word tang jiwang tang sarirang. Jiwang here means the self or soul. It's another word for attained. And this word has gone into Malay, jiwa, meaning life. No? So the self or the soul is the same as the body. Now this is the materialistic view, very popular view in Singapore. That means when the body dies, the soul or the self also dies. Or this is also called the annihilationist view. In other words, once the self dies, there's no more existence. But this is a very dangerous idea. Yeah, this is why many of these people have been committing crimes. People believe this kind of idea. So this is your only life, you know. So when you die, that's it. Right? So you might as well live your life well, meaning sow all the wild oats you can. Yeah, you see money there, take it. You know, don't get caught. You know. Unfortunately, we do get caught. You know? People get caught again and again because they have this very stupid philosophy. If you don't get caught, then the Buddha declares in the Avyākata Sutta, he says, "Oh foolish man, you do all kinds of evil deeds. You think no one will know. You yourself know this. Number 1, you yourself know this. Number 2, the Buddhas know and the Devas know." So what the Buddha is saying is, one day when you are reborn, say Buddha's time, the Buddha will look at you and say, "Okay, this is what you did. You know, that's why you have these difficulties." So the Buddha is telling you ahead, you know, be true to yourself. Right? You can't cheat anyone. You think you want to cheat the world, you can't. You're just cheating yourself. Right? So there's a very useful teaching there. Then this idea 6, the self and the body are separate. Okay, so here's the body, there's the soul, right? So this is eternalism. Of course, we normally wouldn't say the body is eternal, because the body is 4 elements and impermanent. What about the self, the soul, this is the mental aspect. So they have this wrong view that, oh, that must be eternal then, you know. These are the eternalists, the God believers. They believe this kind of idea. So the God believers would have this kind of opinion, right? Okay, clear enough? 5 and 6, any questions? Right, the last 4 are a bit tricky. Tathagata. Who is a Tathagata? Okay, Tathagata, we normally know this term as referring to the Buddha, right? The Buddha says the Tathagata does this, Tathagata does that. But remember, the Buddha didn't invent the word Tathagata. The language was already there when the Buddha arose in the world. He just used the word, but once he used the word, it took on a new meaning. So when you say the Tathagata, it's like third person, like a royal first person, so to speak, we. But here, because he's talking about non-self, so he says Tathagata. Here Tathagata, the simplest translation is thus come. Tathagata, one who has thus come. He has come when the right time is there. When everything is ready, he will arise in the world. In other words, he's not a prophet. Nobody sent him. He arose naturally. It's like by natural selection, as it were. The only thing, no one selects the Buddha. He arises by himself. You can also translate Tathagata as thus gone. Tathagata. Okay? So there are almost a dozen ways of translating this word. Yeah, because this is the thing about Indian language. It's very flexible. Very flexible. Play on words. Okay? So you can imagine when you look at the Avyākata Sutta, right? So and the words will be very long, so you imagine it can be interpreted in many ways. Anyway, Tathagata does come, someone who has arisen by a natural process. So now that's the usual meaning we know. But here the meaning is more broad. That's why I use a small t. One who has thus come. Here my understanding is this. It is a blanket term for all beings, whether enlightened or not enlightened. For everyone, whether enlightened or not enlightened. Okay, Tathagata. Because when you use the word man, for example, the Buddha says it doesn't apply to him, manusa, Once in the Dona Sutta, it is recorded a Brahmin that comes to the Buddha. This Brahmin, he saw footprint, on the very soft sand. And this Brahmin is a footprint reader. He could read footprint, he could know, oh, this person is highly attained and so on. So he followed the footprint. It's a very cute picture. I can imagine in my mind this Brahmin walking like Sherlock Holmes, looking at the footprint and following him. And he meets the Buddha sitting under a tree. So he goes to the Buddha and says, oh, so he must be amazed and feel privileged to meet the Buddha. But he saw the footprint that this is no ordinary man. So he asked the Buddha, are you a deva? Are you a deva? Okay. The Buddha says no. And are you a yaksha? Yaksha is a powerful spirit in India in those days. Like locally, you might say jinn, the local belief. He says, no, I'm not a yaksha. Are you a Gandharva? Okay, so Gandharva is a heavenly minstrel, one of the 70 devas. Buddha says, no. So this Brahmin becoming confused. He says, there's none of this. So are you a human being? Must be human being. He says, no to all the first three. Buddha says, no, I'm not a human being either. Now that creates a problem, right? So he says, what are you? What are you? Then the Buddha says something very beautiful. He says, oh Brahmin, just as a lotus rises from the water and it blossoms beautifully in the sun and is untouched by the water. It rises to the water, or the muddy waters, but it blossoms in the sun, untouched by the water. So am I Buddha. Okay? So here, in other words, you have what in philosophy is called subspecies eternitatis. Have you heard of this term? It's a big word. It's a Latin philosophical term. I think Baruch Spinoza introduced it, I think. It means only one of a kind. Only one of a kind. So in other words, there's only one Buddha. And that's it. It's a species by himself. Buddha, that's all. But he's enlightened. You cannot categorize him in any other way. He's not going to be reborn and so on. Okay? So, or there's another simpler term. It's called sui generis. Okay? But the problem with sui generis is, Latin it means self-generated. But anyway, the sense is about the same. It's by itself, by himself. So, what the Buddha is trying to say here is, you cannot categorize the Buddha in any way, in worldly terms. You cannot define him in any other standpoints either. Right? So, from that teaching, the Buddha is saying, don't try to pin him down. You can't. He's talking about nirvana, so you can't pin nirvana down. You cannot say nirvana is this or nirvana is that. Okay? You can say what nirvana is like. You can tell stories, yes. So in a way, you might say those Mahayana teachers, they were trying to help local people like us imagine what nirvana is like. So they talk about all these fabulous paradises and so on. Right? But still, nirvana is different. So here the Tathagata refers to, let's look at the case of an ordinary person first, or maybe the difficult one. Okay, look at, say the Buddha, let's say Tathagata as the Buddha. Okay, look at the first question. Does the Buddha exist after death? You can answer yes or no. Or you can even say yes or no if you like, but it's just viewpoint. If you say, no, he's dead, what are you talking about? He means what? The body. Okay, so the body is gone. Okay, fine. But it's gone. We're not talking about any soul here. His consciousness is no more there. So in other words, we can only talk in conditional terms. You cannot talk in absolute terms, basically. That's another point you bear in mind. Okay? And then can we say the Buddha does not exist after death? No, again, you can't. Alright? So Buddha said, There's a wrong way of thinking. Because if you say not, that means you compare with existence. And then the third one more about both exist and not exist. Here it's a bit tricky. Because here again, conditional. Both is and is not. It helps us to understand certain ideas here. For example, you brought along a picture of yourself. Let's say your friends come along and you did something dreadful. You bring out a family album. Say, okay. Or you show them a family video, okay? You say, okay, that's me when I was 5 years old. Alright? And then the movie goes on 1 hour later. That's me when I was 10 years old. And that's me when I was 20 years old. So, and the viewer will say, wow, you look different. Can't be you. Just can't be you, right? That's not you. But you say, no, that is me. Or that was me, see? So, you have a picture of you, 3 years old, 10 years old, now, see? You look at the picture, you say, that's me. But your friends say, it can't be you, it's a different person. The reality is, both are true. You are not the person because you are different now, in time. But it's the same person because of continuity. So there you are again, conditional way of talking. Conditional way of talking. So there's no absolute way of talking. This is not the final truth. Okay? The last one, neither exist nor not exist. The Buddha said this is endless aging. This one is, in Malay we say pelit, you know. It means trying to beat about the bush. Not really answering a question, just trying to get away by telling long stories. So, for example, this, I think it's Sanjaya, this Sariputta Moggallana's ex-teacher. His view was this. He says, if you ask me, the world exists or does not exist, if it does exist, I will tell you so, but I wouldn't say that I'm telling you so. If the world does not exist, again, if it's not so, I will tell you it is not so, but then again, you can't really say that I'm telling you it is not so. So what is it talking about, you know? So this is where you find, you'll be surprised. Many Indian gurus like to talk like this. And the students will say, wow, this guru, really, he can really make your mind go round, you know, he's a really great teacher. So the Buddha said, this is the stupidest of all the teachers, you know, because they confuse the students, all right? So this is the fourth one we want to avoid. Now, coming to the ordinary people, it's simpler. Before, any questions?
Sorry, yeah. What was the meaning of the tathagata before Buddha started to use it? You said it's just century.
Yeah, it simply refers to a saint, I think. Someone they regard as a saint, someone who is enlightened, someone who is like reached the goal. The general idea of someone who is of a higher level than
so that was what he meant before Buddha's time?
Probably, yeah.
But you have defined it, you said it's a generic...
In the Buddha's time, the Buddha used it for himself. Sometimes the Buddha would say tathagata, referring to himself.
So he meant it, in other words, he referred himself to a saint.
To him tathagata, he used the word just as it is, meaning does come, one who has does come, that's all. Okay? Yeah, I mean you can take the words meaning the saint, it doesn't matter, he's just using the word as it is to refer to himself.
So the definition, one who has does come or gone, is what he meant. Is how he used it, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yes.
That's his usage.
Correct, does come. This is the usual translation we will give in the Buddhist texts. Does come.
But that was what he meant.
You can say that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So now on the ordinary level, we have, let's say, okay, a friend we know, A, dies. So we ask ourselves, A is dead, does he exist after death? You can say yes, you can say no. Okay? Maybe if it's attained nirvana, you say, in a sense, it doesn't exist. If it's not attained nirvana, if you're reborn somewhere, we don't know, then you say he exists. Okay? But there's a problem, you know. Is that person who's reborn the same person as the one who died? For example, let's say and this is just an example. Let's say, long time ago, say Aikido was say Cleopatra in Egypt, long ago. But are you and Cleopatra the same person? Very difficult question to answer, right? You see the problem here now? So you cannot say it's the same person or not the same.
Yeah, because first of all, it's not the same body. And secondly, the consciousness changes all the time.
There you are. Okay. So this person is dead, so it's not really a meaningful question to ask. And does the person not exist? Again, same thing, same problem. What about both? Again, same problem. And then neither is just trying to twist the facts. Very confusing. So these four states are not very helpful in terms of talking about what's going on in terms of philosophical ideas and so on. Speculative. Okay? Is that clear enough? Now I know you don't like to spend too much time here because there's all speculative. So now we come to the sutta itself, page 100. So let's see what the Buddha has to say about all these speculative ideas. The discourse on the undetermined, A7.54. Then a certain monk approached the Blessed One, and having approached him, saluted him, and sat down at one side. Sitting thus at one side, he said this to the Blessed One. What, Bhante, is the reason, the condition for the non-arising of doubt regarding the undetermined points in an instructed noble disciple? Okay? So how do we deal with that? 10 points. Then comes the teaching. You notice here, the early suttas are very clear and direct. Question, clear answer. Okay? Okay, this is one of the simplest suttas. Some which are quite detailed.
Arising, that it does not arise,
correct.
Or there is no doubt. Is it
Not arising of doubt. In other words, doubt would not arise in me thinking about all these 10 points. Okay, how do I prevent doubt? How do I prevent all this speculation about, all these 10 points? Then the Buddha answers, section 2, Bhikshu, doubt regarding the undetermined points do not arise in an uninstructed, wise, noble disciple on account of the ending of views. Very fast answer. You want to end speculating about these 10 points? Clear away views. Don't have views. Bhikshus, the tathagata exists after death. This is falling into views. The tathagata does not exist after death. This is a falling into views. The tathagata both exists and does not exist after death. This is a falling into views. The tathagata neither exists nor not exists. This is a falling into views. Falling into views. In other words, once if you think in this way, the Buddha probably exists after death, right? Then you start thinking. Now, you start thinking because it's only a view. View means one way of looking at things. If there's one way, there are other ways. I can see it this way. It's a mountain, You come from here, you say, this is how it looks like. And then you want to go the other side, this is how it looks like. So you find there are many ways of looking at it, and you can make up your mind which one is the best one. That's the meaning here. These are all different ways of looking at it, and none of them applies to Buddha. Because the uninstructed or ignorant worldling does not understand views. There you are, see? When you come for classes like this, you listen to teachings like this, you are told again and again, views. Views means a way of looking at something. That means there are many ways of looking at it, so there's no end to it. And because there's no end to it, you start speculating. So in other words, it's just a view. Let it go. You look within yourself, and you begin to understand how you view things. Right? Once you understand how you view things, then you understand you don't need views anymore. He does not understand the arising of views. He does not understand the ending of views. He does not understand the path leading to the ending of views. So here you see the Four Noble Truths applied to how we view things. Let's say, for example, very interesting way of talking about it. Not always, in recent times, suggested it's very good to study psychology. When you study psychology, you study Buddhism and you study the Buddhists, or you study religious people in general, you find personal problems, personal issues and religion closely related. Right? For example, why does a person like to have a God idea, eternal God idea, fatherly God idea? Right? This person says, oh, I like this idea because there's a father figure is watching over me. It's something like, I feel protected. So that's a view. It's a wrong view. This person views that he needs security. Right? And you have someone comes along and say, oh, the Buddha, you just chant his name, Buddha will help you. Why does he like this idea? Obviously, he has some emotional need, some support, you see, right? So, that's how the views arise, right? So how to end the view? Well, you teach this person how to be confident, how to be self-reliant, right? For example, when we were kids, we were very scared, right? So I was very scared, so I sleep with the lights on, I don't want the ghost to come to me, and I have this stupid view that if it's bright and I can see the ghost won't come to me. Alright? So, so this is where, in other words, we all have views, right? But as we grow older, we say, oh, it's just a view, it's a wrong view, then you let it go. That's the third point. Okay, the fourth one is, how do you do it, right? Then you go through the training and so on. Now, by the way, this Four Noble Truths sequence, I think, is a later sequence, later in the Buddha's time. It evolved maybe in the second period or later in the first period. I think there are certain suttas which arrange the Four Noble Truths in a slightly different way. 3 and 4 are switched around. Number 3 and 4 are switched around. So you have, first is suffering, okay? Number 2 is arising of suffering. Number 3 is the path. And the last one is nirvana. Do you feel that this is a more natural progression? There you are. So that was I think the original progression. But then when the Buddha started to teach in terms of practice, the current model is more easy to teach. So it's a teaching model afterwards. I mean, when you teach, what will you teach? The teacher will say, okay, there is suffering, right? And the arising, this is how suffering arises, right? And then you want to end it, right? This ending is called nirvana. This is the theory, see? And then comes finally, you understand this, you practice. So it's a teaching model. Whereas in the case of this early model, you might say, is the model the Buddha used for the arahats. Those are awakened, I suppose. You see a natural progression. Right? All right, number 4. These views increase for him. Right? So when you one view, many more views increase. I mean, it's just like, you read the Lotus Sutra, you see, okay, this fantastic idea that what 10,000 kotis of Buddhas. Wow, that's, I don't know. Yeah, 1 koti is 10 million.
Oh, 1 koti is 10 million.
Yeah, 10 million. So wow, how many? 100 million Buddhas. So many of them, And then you have to think how to explain this, and so on. So one view leads to another view. Right?
You have a question for
yes.
What do you mean? What does it mean the worldling does not understand views? Does it mean he doesn't understand the nature of views?
Yeah, maybe you can say nature of views. What views are. Okay, so these views increase for him, right? Views have a way of increasing. There's a special term for this. It's called papancha, papancheti. These are rather beautiful words, this, in a sense, because they describe mental process. Let's say when you are, let's say you have a girlfriend or a wife, and then this person, you break up, so you feel very sad. You think and think about it. So thoughts grow and grow, and when you think about it, then you become, fear arises. And when there's a lot of fear, anxiety arises. I get a lot of people coming to me with this problem for counseling, anxiety, right? So I'll tell them, well, you think too much. And they agree. So we teach them how to let go of thinking. Do loving kindness meditation, for example, feeling meditation. So these views are thinking. So thinking grows. He is not freed from decay and death, from sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain and despair. He is not freed from suffering, I say. Right? So in other words, this thinking is what keeps us going in the world. and makes us suffer. Now, again here, a philosophy lecturer might disagree with it. Say, we all need to think, right? So you find even Buddhist scholars, they're very good, and they will teach you all the nice stuff, and they're really excellent scholars. They have been quoted everywhere. But the moment they reach retirement, they say, that's it, that's the end for me, and they go to the garden and start plucking weeds and so on. They don't want to teach anymore because it's tiresome. You have to prepare your lesson, you have to argue your case. So they feel so happy, so free after that. Because that's true. You have to think a lot when you teach. But what about Buddhism? Okay, Buddhism is a great blessing. For example, after 3 decades of studying the suttas, I'm so happy I could translate suttas. After 12 years of translating the sutta, I find everything is so easy. But now I tell myself, now that I know how to translate it, but I don't have much time left. So I'm rushing for time now. Now I'm rushing for time. You see? So that's the way it is. You have to accept this nature of impermanence, right? So you're not concerned about views anymore. Next. It means leading to. Kamini means leading to.
Leading to.
Yeah. Patipada means path.
Yes.
Kamini leading to. Nirodha ending. Diṭṭhi view. Okay, the path leading to ending of views. Okay, so section 5. But, that means it's the good disciple. But bhikshus, the instructed noble disciple, understands views, understands the arising of views, understands the ending of views, understands the path leading to the ending of views. Sometimes we understand it. It's very difficult to teach this, Sometimes I tell myself, how do I present this idea clearly when my session comes to talk about the Lotus Sutra? And will these people convert? And will they say, oh yeah, disagree, this is beautiful, let's return to early Buddhism. This thought came to me when I was at the seminar yesterday. I said, everybody is so convinced about their views, and everyone is intelligent, right? I said, we have become theologians. We're all theologians, right? Who's a theologian? A philosophy lecturer once said, someone wrote a book and said, a philosopher is a person who is looking for a non-existent black cat in a totally dark room. Wait, the creature has not come. There's a creature. There's not a creature. It's coming. But a theologian is one who finds the cat.
But the cat is not there.
Exactly. So where did the cat come from? Okay. All right.
Black cat, non-existent
Yeah.
cat in the bedroom, so it's blind.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The theologian nevertheless finds it
Yeah, so
non-existent.
yeah.
Cat in a blind situation.
Okay. All right. Right. Now let's go a bit more. So the true disciple knows how views arise according to the pattern of the Four Noble Truths. These views cease for him. He is freed from decay and death, from sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair. He is freed from suffering, I say. Right? Get rid of views, you don't suffer anymore. Okay? And this is what I've learned from early Buddhism. Clear your views away. Let go of views. So your mind is like a mirror, reflecting what's before you. And this is what the early Buddhism is about. So how can I don't need Nirvana, I don't need Mahayana for that, I don't need Lotus Sutra for that. Okay? Alright, next section. Bhikshus, an instructed noble disciple who knows thus, sees thus, does not determine or does not declare that the tathagata exists or that the tathagata does not exist, both exist and does not exist, and neither exists nor non-exist. In other words, he doesn't need all these speculative views. 9. Bhikshus, an instructed noble disciple, knows thus, he sees thus, that such is the undeterminable nature that is in the undetermined points. So you understand that these speculative points are like that. You could go about in a circle, there's no end to it. You will never feel at peace with yourself. Don't talk about awakening. No? Now then next is a reflection. Okay? Look at the nature of the repetition here. This is the classic, this is a hallmark of early Buddhism, but these are meant for reflection. 11. The tathagata exists after death, bhikshus. This is a falling into craving. This is a falling into perception. This is an imagining. This is a mental proliferating. This is a falling into clinging. This brings about remorse. Now, understand this key paragraph, because the other three, in fact the rest they kind of fall into the same pattern. If you start speculating on any one of these 10 ideas, craving arises. Meaning what? Oh, I'm right. This is the one. Okay? So you notice each of the speakers, they say, I'm right, basically. And we try to say it in so many words, Alright? So now when my turn to speak, I have to tell them, everyone is right. And I'm going to say in a way that I don't make a fool of myself. So we'll see. Number 2, falling into perception, right? So we look at this and then we recognize this idea from our past experiences, perception. And also we see what we need. You can have any idea in your mind, And if you are in California or even in Singapore now, I think, you look around, you will find a guru, a teacher who will teach exactly what you like. And you will say, wow, this guru is great, because he agrees with you. Number 2, imaginings, right? Highly imaginative. All this God idea doesn't exist, you've got to imagine, right? All these countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, they don't exist, but we imagine. Right? And then the ideas explode, keep on, they lead to more ideas. Okay? Proliferate. And then there's clinging. Right? You get caught up with each idea. This idea, oh, I like this Bodhisattva, I like that teaching, and so on. And then remorse arises, meaning what? You feel guilty if something goes wrong. Maybe you say, oh, I didn't practice this properly. Oh, I said something wrong about this teacher or this deity. And you feel remorseful. Guilt. Guilt arises when you relate yourself to an authority figure. When you see the Buddha as not as a teacher, but as a big authority, a God figure, so to speak. So same thing with the other points. So I'm not going to repeat all the points here. So you think about the tathagata does not exist, or both exist and does not exist. The fourth one, neither exist or not exist. All these 6 problems are going to arise in you. Craving, perception, imagining, proliferating, clinging, and remorse will arise. 15. This is the happy part. Bhikshu, the uninstructed worldling, does not understand remorse or guilt. Let me just add a point here. Does not understand the arising of remorse, does not understand the ending of remorse, does not understand the path leading to the ending of remorse. Remorse is especially a problem in God religions. People feel guilty when they don't go to church, for example, or they don't follow God's commandments, right? But in Buddhism, we discourage this kind of feeling. In fact, remorse is a hindrance to spiritual development. Instead, we should be proactive in our own actions. Recognize the remorse, do loving kindness, clear it away. So, understanding nature of remorse is very important. Nature of guilt. 17. So when you have remorse and you are not freed from decay and death, from sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair, you are not freed from suffering, I say.
So remorse here means guilt, not repentance?
No, different. Repentance is different.
So it's guilt?
Yeah, guilt. A good synonym would be guilt. Okay?
And why is remorse singled out for special mention out of?
Because remorse is a very, very powerful negative emotion. Right? It prevents us from growing. Okay? Let's say you've been coming to the temple every week, every Sunday, and one Sunday you couldn't go, and you felt very guilty about it. See, it doesn't help, see, right? In other words, you take it as a ritual, not really something that's liberating, see, right? Now, what's interesting here is that this remorse is so powerful, it becomes refined as you progress even in sainthood. Okay? So, take the case of a once returner, or anyone for that matter. He's meditating and then he realizes he's going to reach a certain level of understanding. But then the Buddha says, if he has some kind of remorse in his mind or some kind of attachment, then he will become only a non-returner, he will become an arahat. Right? But that's not too bad, you see. But of course the remorse is very refined. For example, let's say this person is going to get enlightened. He thinks, oh, why can't all these people in the world, why don't they see all this truth? So he felt a bit sad because that can happen. So because of that remorse, actually it's compassion, you know. He only attained non-return. Right. And remember, there is an interesting story about one of those 16 students, you know. I forget his name, maybe Mogaraja, I think, or one of those. He's the oldest of the 16 students. And they must have come from the south, so he went to see the Buddha in the north. So his turn came to ask the Buddha a question. He asked the Buddha, and the Buddha explained. He was so happy, and in fact, his mind was clear, and he was going to become arhat, you know. Just before that, he started thinking, oh, if only my teacher was here. See? So that is also a gentle remorse, you know. And so he only attained non-return. I mean, it's still okay, see? It's okay, but I'm just explaining a point, all right? Okay? I mean, it's a matter of time.
So it's attachment?
Slightly, you can.
Yeah, I mean, it's an attachment to the teacher.
Here, remorse is used to show the active nature of it, all right? Okay, we're coming to the end now. 18. Bhikshu, the instructed noble disciple, the wise one, understands remorse, understands the arising of remorse, understands the ending of remorse, and understands the path leading to ending of remorse. This remorse ends for him. Now, this is very useful knowledge when you do counseling, you know, understand nature of guilt, how to overcome guilt. He is freed from decay and death, from sorrow, lamentation, physical pain and mental pain, and despair. He is free from suffering, I say. We choose an instructed noble disciple who knows thus, sees thus, does not determine or does not declare whether the tathagata exists, does not exist, or both, or neither. And because of this, look at 23. But a bhikshu, an instructed noble disciple, knows thus, sees thus, does not shiver, does not shake, does not quake, does not tremble, does not fear, does not have fear, or does not fall into fear, does not fall into fear regarding the undetermined point. This bhikshu is the reason, the condition, for the non-rising of doubt regarding the undetermined points in an instructed noble disciple, right? So there you are. So if you don't have all these views, you don't have no fear, you have to worry about anything. Clear the views, you're at peace with yourself.
Yeah, 21 to 24 is a repetition word for word of para 8 to 10.
Yeah, it sometimes happens, it's a closing, yeah. But it's
a repetition of nature of view is 8 to 10.
Yeah.
But this is under remorse.
Correct.
So
yeah, it's called a refrain. It's called a refrain. Refrain, that means it's stressing a point. Remember, this is an oral tradition, so the key points would be repeated. All right.
okay.
Yeah. It is very typical in the early suttas. All right. So we have come to the end of the sutta. Question time. We have a bit of time. So here, in this sutta, the Avyākata Sutta, what the Buddha is telling us is, don't think too much, basically. Of course, it's okay to argue, to discuss interesting parts of the Dharma, but when you come to very speculative aspects, they're not very helpful. So, in other words, when we discuss, we got to try to see that it leads to something useful. And it's a very easy point to remember is, this discussion we have as practicing Buddhists, does it lead to my inner calm? Does it make me feel more peaceful or not? Or does it make me more confused? Or more to think about? Think about in a positive way, yeah, but what about just to be happy? That's why I have two kinds of reflections. The normal one, which is the simple joys, I try my best to make people happy. When they read it, they say, wow, that's great, you know. Then the second one is to make them think. Because there are some difficult issues in the world. So I have people write to me and say, oh, you know, sorry, I read your reflection. I have to read it again and again. And I say, wow, but I'm not able to do this, but I know what this point is about. So there's something to think about, there's something to work at. Okay? So one is the feeling aspect to make them happy, and the rest is the thinking aspect to make them go into action. In a sense, both you go into action. If you're happy, you say, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be happy. I want to make people around me happy. That's also a positive action. The other one is you go on the quest. Say, yeah, I want to change myself. I want to make this effort to change myself. So in a sense, both lead to inner peace. Okay? Great. Any questions? Okay, no more questions, huh? Alright, so we end here with a short reflection. Right, in today's study we were reminded that the mind is a wonderful tool, but for the mind to really work properly, we must clear the mind, because thoughts are the debris of the mind. Well, thoughts have a place in the world, but there comes a time when we must clear away all these thoughts so that the mind becomes a clear mirror, reflecting the world just as it is. So that we're able to see the world truly as it is, and from there understand people as they are, understand ourselves as we are, and go from there towards awakening. Reflecting in this way is wonderful good karma. By the power of this karma and many other wonderful good karma we have been doing, practicing meditation, keeping the precepts, practicing generosity, listening to suttas and so on. May we be well and happy in this life itself, here and now. And by all these good deeds we have done and many others, may we attain spiritual liberation, or at least aspire to attain stream winning in this life itself. In this moment of peace also, let us send out our loving kindness to all the people here, people who work in this place and contribute to this place, that they may be well and happy, be blessed with good health and strength. May all the beings inhabiting this place also be friendly and safe. And also let us extend our loving kindness to all our loved ones, our family and friends. May they be well, may they be happy. And to also those whom the Dharma have not touched, that they may see the Dharma for themselves happily and come to see the truth and be liberated for themselves. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.